David Mason, the Director of Public Health for the town of Sandwich, and we're doing public service announcement number 24 regarding the coronavirus and the status. And as you know, we will have Chief Burke kick off where we're currently at.
Morning. Thank you, Dave. As of today, July 1st, we're happy to report we have 0 cases and 0 contacts, which is the first time since roughly the middle of March. 97 recoveries and 3 deaths. So that is good news. Not to get complacent, our theme here is keep Sandwich at 0. So we'll continue the mask wearing and the social distancing. The numbers will not stay at 0, as we know. This virus will fluctuate, but at the moment we are in good shape. And again, this group set out early on 3 major events that we wanted to get done before June 30th. The May 19th election, the town meeting on June 15th, and we were happy to be able to have the graduation at Sandwich High School on Monday night. So we've completed all 3 of those significant events. We are now moving on to our next block of events with the reopening of school, the primary election in September, most likely a special town meeting, and the November presidential election. So we'll start focusing our efforts on that. And so, Dave, I'm happy to report where we sit today with those numbers.
Which is a good thing to note also, because the state had its lowest number and had 0 deaths as of yesterday in terms of the total in the state, actually. And just to understand where we're at, in the phased approach of opening in the state of Massachusetts, we're still in phase 2. Phase 3 should be coming up shortly, which will affect fitness centers, health clubs, indoor swimming pools, indoor recreation activities, whale watches. I'm just pointing out the ones that seem more critical to the Cape. And after that will be phase 4, which will be your movie theaters, your bars, street festivals, parades, road races. So that's what's coming in phase 4. Phase 4 would be your normal period of time at that point. Looking at what's going on in the rest of the country, Southwest and South, the governor's actually plan is working well, and just the discipline of the people of the state, it's going in the right direction. But today we have with us Heather Harper and George Dunham, and we're going to have a conversation where we're at and how we're proceeding. And I know Heather wants to talk about the opening of town offices and how where we stand with that.
So I can talk a little bit about the opening of town offices. I believe we're entering our 6th week of being open to the public, and that I think has gone very smoothly, both for our staff and for the community at large. And that really is a tribute to the structure that we had in place and the communications that we've had both externally with the public and internally with our staff, that every step of the way it's been clear that there's been a command team of interdisciplinary staff that represents a broad range of the services that we provide in the community, and just having the information flow available to the community about what we're doing, how we're preparing, establishing a plan for reopening, doing that early, saying what we're going to do and doing what we say we're going to do. Just like any good practice, I think that's why it has been effective. So there hasn't been any, pixie dust that we've sprinkled on the town of Sandwich. It's just has been part of the planning for a pandemic and the implementation of the sanitation, the controls, the social distancing, and the respect that we have both for ourselves internally, for the staff, and the respect that we have for patrons has resulted in, I think, everyone feeling pretty safe.
Where do we stand with other communities on the Cape? Are they open, or are they?
Yes, so next week we'll be in our 6th week of being open to the public in the vast majority of our offices, and I believe most Cape Towns are not open yet. I think we were one of the first communities in the state to open the way we did at the volume we did, and I think just to back up what Heather said, I think one of the reasons we were able to do it sooner than most is our COVID team had been talking about it for months, had been preparing, and I know we talked about it with Town Clerk Taylor White, but having that special election a little bit early sort of taught us what we had to do early on, and we just sort of carried that forward. And I know a couple of these things we said before other public service announcements, but our facilities department did a great job, structurally preparing us for what we needed. And she'd be the last to say it, but Heather was our leader through this whole effort, and she was working on draft plans months ago, and I still get emails from towns even this week saying, hey, can we get a copy of what your plan was because you seem to be so far ahead of us. And so a lot of it's a testament to her work and how hard the departments worked together and cooperated.
Well, I think as far as just as people were hoarding toilet paper in advance, the director of facilities, Brian Schlegel, probably bought every piece of plexiglass that the state had in supply, and we now have it. So that's why one of the reasons we were able to, as far as open with our facilities, is that that Brian put in place measures so the public would feel safe and also the employees.
Dave, I just want to make one follow-up comment to that. I think we weren't in a race to open, and I think we're not feeling like we're competitive or that we've been successful in opening early. We were simply prepared to do so. So any community that we've talked to about opening, we've said, don't open until you feel you're ready to open. And the culture of the departments, the culture of the community, really, I think, drive when it's the right time for any place to open. So the timing was right here. We all felt comfortable doing it. We felt we had everything in place, but that doesn't mean that any community should be in a rush to do so. So we felt good about it here. But it certainly isn't something that we say, you should be open.
Okay, I'll take the competitive side of it. But anyways,
Okay, so just mind if I take over a little bit? Because we thought
here we go.
the thing for today, we're going to sort of fire some questions at everyone just to open things up a little bit. And this goes hand in hand. I think we've all observed that there's natural anxiety on the part of staff coming back and the public in terms of coming to some of the events we've had. But I think it's been fortunate in the sense, I think the staff members who were concerned have seen what's in place, and that's made them feel better. Not that there's things that don't happen each day that we all scratch our heads about, but the issue that I know you guys had, we had residents from the public say town meeting would be unsafe.
Yeah, and we looked at this back, remember, in March and April. It was a moving target at the time. Town meeting was going to be at this date, and then we pushed it back, and I think there was a lot of concern. I heard a lot of concern from people, and we were very patient. I think people have to understand, patient, we were diligent, we did our research, we looked at what was available, we probably walked through the high school multiple times, flip-flopped on different locations, but we came to a consensus of all the entities involved, including the school district, that this was going to work. And looking at how it was set up, and it was attended with 140 plus people, but everybody that was there wore masks, everybody worked together, and I was very proud to not only see the turnout and how town meeting went, but the fact that our numbers went down, not up, after the town meeting assembly, where there was some concern that this would turn into a larger super spreader event. It went in the other direction, and we're happy to report today 0, which that number is not going to stay at 0. We'd like to keep it that way, but I think that's an important piece to this, that the election, May 19th, the town meeting, we did not see a spike in numbers, and people were very compliant. We didn't have too many issues at all.
Well, I think added on that is we acknowledge as far as the perspective of the public and the employees and what we were doing towards designing how these events would occur, and the opening is acknowledging their anxiety and lack of control. Mm-hmm. And basically they just want to know that they were somehow in control of their space. And we talked about that with the employees of controlling your space and how to do that. And 2, prepping people as far as what they could expect when they walked in the doors, and acknowledging that people want to see it ahead of time. They don't want to be worried about what are we walking into, and we made sure that did not occur. Taylor White did it with his videos for voting, and we did it with the video for the town meeting also.
I know we've often said that we couldn't have done town meeting without the help of John Nelson, the school facilities director, and Bryce Harper, the school IT director. Similarly, in a way, we played it forward and paid it forward when both of you helped out with this high school graduation. So maybe just talk a little bit about how you feel that went, and all the effort that you guys did for months leading up to it.
I think it was very important that the students have their day, and I think the guidance that came out from the state was late July, and we felt we could make that mark. There are 2 things we looked at. We were looking at projections in April saying, if we keep doing what we're doing, I think by the end of June, our numbers are going to be in a good place where we can do it at the end of June. I think that was one of the first parts. Second part was the influx of visitors after June 30th. So we want to be ahead of the curve on that. The whole setup of it, the state police did us a huge favor when they did their graduation in Foxborough in mid to late April. And we took that and we watched that as an outdoor ceremony and just applied it, the same basic concept to the high school graduation. It was very regimented. I heard from a few people, it was like, oh my God, we all had to arrive together, and those control measures were in place just to protect us. And I think having that control measure where you sat in a assigned area, which your graduate was directly in front of you, I think that alleviated a lot of the stress too. I got to find a good seat, and where's my graduate going to be? Well, we took care of that ahead of time. So like Dave said, you do a lot of these things ahead of time. You preview, lay out the parking. We had a good presence there. The weather cooperated, thank God, towards the end. And it was just good to see, and I've heard from people, that's one of the better things this group has done. I mean, we have to do town meeting. We have to do elections. We did not have to have that graduation June 29th. And I think the fact that everybody came together to make that happen, I know the kids are appreciative and the parents are. And again, it just shows good planning, and there was a lot of back and forth on that. We were able to execute that also, and I think it went very, very well.
Yeah, and that graduation, after we had walked it and with the school personnel and set up a design for how that would work, the state did come out with a guidance that basically was what was implemented at that point, and not that they utilized our plan, or it was just having foresight and common sense in terms of how to approach it to protect people. And so our guidance, how graduation ran did follow the state's guidance. And again, the state's guidance as far as allowing allowing graduation or waiting until July, it is a thing for the entire state, but one size doesn't fit all because of our tourist industry. We're different from Western Mass. So as far as JJ had said, we saw a need to do it prior to the arrival, prior to any increase in numbers at that point. So it was the best decision for us.
I think one of the things that's made us all feel confident in the operational decisions that we're making, not only with staff but the public, is that the good fortune that we were selected as a beta site for the rapid result testing. So maybe Chief Burke, if you could talk a little bit about like where that sits now and how, based on what you and the nursing department and the fire department have done, that we're playing an integral role in the company's ability to get certified by the FDA.
Yeah, so the good thing, this is all about testing. I've said that to anybody that will listen, to my students, anybody. You have to be able to test consistently, not just once, multiple times, and have a testing plan. Having the good fortune of being able to utilize these serology rapid 15-minute blood tests with minimal invasive procedure, just pricking the finger, was huge, because that really set up the whole, we talk about reopening, that was a huge part of it, right? Bringing employees back, giving them an initial rapid test, and also having a mechanism in place to fall back on to obtain further testing. Once you get that set up, the reopening kind of, with the other pieces, kind of fell into place. Two of the companies have reached out, and we're doing a study for the FDA on this. They call it a comparative study on the rapid testing to show the efficacy of the test, right? So if somebody tests not negative, we send them for a nasal PCR swab, and then those results are compared. We've been pretty much online, in line with the testing results, and again, it gives us the ability to make people feel better. Before you occupy your space, and Dave talked about control of space, you're going to be rapid tested first, and some people found out they had the antibody. And they were sick in March, and all of a sudden they found out that, at this point, that they had the antibody. We've tested over 500 municipal employees, both full, part-time, and seasonal. So everybody that's working for the town, even seasonal, we've done, I think, 7 rounds of testing. The firefighter paramedics do the testing. Joanne and Dave oversee the results. We're compliant with all information in HIPAA, and I just think that is the backbone for what we are doing. And if we can accelerate the process for these rapid tests to be distributed more widely, if we can be a part of that, I think that is important.
And then how about, I think at our, when we first started all this, we were meeting 7 days a week, starting in mid-March, after meeting several times in February before there even was a positive case in town. About a month ago, I think we dropped it to 3 times a week, and now we're down to 2 times a week. As we've done that, it's fair to say that the more we reopen, the more operational issues we hit. And I think we all sort of joked last Friday at our meeting that I think we had a collective list of about 20 different items that had popped up. And that's, I think, one thing that maybe the public doesn't see, but I think Heather and I probably bother the two of you a couple times a day with weird things that pop up that, we want to talk over as a group, and we always go to the two of you. So maybe if you could just talk a little bit about how some of those, like, what seem to be simple operational things aren't simple anymore in this environment.
I'll just briefly mention on the bothering us every day, that's fine, that's what we're here for. But one of the concepts we developed early in March was the virtual EOC. So the fact that we met 7 days a week, 5 down to 2, doesn't change the fact that 7 days a week we are monitoring this. It's just in different phases as we get together. But yeah, there's things that we did not forecast at all. And there are things that we're not thinking about now that are going to come up. But when you reopen, I think as long as you have a team and a process in place to address these issues, I think that my advice for other communities is once you reopen, it's going to get even busier. And I think leaning on Dave and the expertise of Dave and Joanne on, a lot of this reopening, sanitation, what's going to work best, I think has been critical. You want to chime in, Dave, on that?
Well, as far as, and those operational things that the public does not see, is along with that is our community and the request for information and interpretation also from them in the community as far as how to interpret the guidance documents. When can they open? That's a regular thing. Who should I submit my documents to? And so that is just a continual request of information, along with, just as all of us have, we have our daily operational demands, and plus this on top of it. I mean, it's not, and that's why, people have been very good, and we do now say, please have some patience with us. We'll get back to you, because everybody's world is important to them, but we're dealing with everybody's world. So at the same time.
I think the other thing I'll just add to that is it gives you an opening to what other town departments, and we know what other town departments do in the periphery, like just in general, but the devil's in the details here, and when you see what Council on Aging does day in and day out, I know that stuff they do day in and day out, but then there's this other stuff that comes into play that, you look at and say, wow, there's a lot that goes on in this community. Me as a fire chief, I've had my eyes open, and I've been here for 30-plus years. I have an idea of how the town operates, saying, wow, when you throw a pandemic into an operational mode and you see what the Council on Aging and the Health Department deal with daily, it does open your eyes to.
Well, that goes back to our first meeting, because Chief Wack had made a comment which just blew me as far as what he would expect to see for increase in calls, as far as specifically domestic violence. Yep. With people staying at home and troubles and anxiety. And that just, that's a world that I'm not even involved in. So that really just shocked me.
Right. I think just some real quick operational issues that I think we've been impressed about, like how much time it's taken, but also like how many different departments have to get involved. Like we've talked about beach operations, I don't know how many times. There's literally 8 to 10 town departments that have a piece of that pie. And, we're constantly trying to figure out what's the right way to do things. How do you keep the public safe for the greater public good? But then how do you give people their freedom as well? And I think great examples, Heather scheduled another meeting for this afternoon about the 4th of July issues, because we're facing that this upcoming weekend. People don't understand the human resource issues that our HR department, who also assists the school with advice, does. So Marie Buckner, Linda Kiley, it's pretty, maybe Heather and I see that more, but the type of things that come up that we're having to think about that we've never had to before. And I think just that general goal that we've all had to try to help the local businesses as much as we possibly could, to be as flexible as we could, but also be safe. And I know, as you were saying, Dave, it's not just municipal stuff that we want to highlight, it's all that private things. And then I'm just going to wrap up quickly with like 3 quick hits. So our 9-person team that has met constantly is the 4 of us, Police Chief Peter Wack, Superintendent of Schools Pam Gould, which is unique because a lot of towns don't involve the schools, which I know we all scratch our heads about. Joanne Gake, our public health nurse, who we've all said, like, behind the scenes has done an outstanding job. And then 2 individuals that I don't think the public really know much about, Brian Gallant, our emergency management director, and our deputy director, Chip Riley. Every single meeting, every single call, they get a nominal, embarrassing stipend from the town to do what they do, and they've been there every day. So maybe if you guys could just talk, maybe JJ, what do you think about the effort that they've put forth?
Yeah, and I think it's important for the public to realize, in some communities, the police or fire chief are the emergency management director, and I'm not an advocate for that model, and I'm a fire chief. I think you need to have a third party that oversees that, and with both Brian's experience, and he was on Sandwich Fire when I was a little kid, I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, and has moved on to consulting and has a wealth of experience, and with Chip Riley's experience in the Coast Guard in his previous life, having those 2 assets available to manage a lot of the logistical pieces, I think, is huge. And Bud's right, it is an embarrassingly nominal fee that they get paid, but they both carry the passion for the job and for the community, and we're very, very lucky to have both of them in emergency management, and I'm very lucky to be able to work with them and for them to support our operation. I think that's key for the public to understand.
Can you just speak to also, JJ, as far as what they do in getting us supplies and dealing with the state agencies?
Yep, so all supply ordering goes through what's called WebEOC, which is a computer program through the MEMA bunker in Framingham, and Chip maintains that. So we need a request for a the hand sanitizer you see in front of you right now, the masks, all that goes through them to make that request. And not only do they make the request and they track it, which is important because, as we all know, you order something on Amazon, you're constantly checking when is it going to be here. That's what they're doing for us. Then when it arrives, they coordinate the delivery of that to the appropriate departments. So, that's one less thing that we have to worry about, that they are running with every single day. And we say to them, hey, we're going to be looking at more gloves. We're reopening the town clerk's office. We're going to need X, Y, Z, and they put the order in for us. I think, and again, that's at no cost. That's coming through the state, and the fact that they're not only tracking that for us, but also when it comes time to all the supplies that we've used, they're giving a running tally to the state. How many people can say how many masks they've distributed, in the last 3 to 4 months, and they're able to do that. So they're invaluable as to what they provide for service.
And I think one thing we've talked about as a group, especially the 4 of us, that like we are blessed with in Sandwich that other communities aren't. Like the Board of Selectmen has been like 100% supportive with us from day one. So a lot of towns have to second guess, am I doing the right thing? Oh, we need them to make hard decisions. We don't want to go before them because we're afraid we're going to get our heads handed to us. Like every single step of the way, everything we've done with them, they've supported 100%. And it sort of gives us, I'm speaking from myself, but it gives all of us the ability trying to run and manage the day-to-day operations of the town. I don't have to think about, oh God, if I do this, will the selectmen support me? It's like, no, it's the right thing to do, let's do it. And if they don't agree with it, fine, we'll change course and they'll let us know. But just that comfort that we've had in that support, I know the 4 of us have talked about constantly. Like, we are so fortunate compared to most
Well, the
towns.
difference is with some other communities, the way the system is set up is we respect their position and their
Yeah.
responsibility, thus their inclusion.
Yeah.
And so they have been included, in the process as we go, and thus supportive of the decisions we are making.
And then I guess I'll ask this of all 3 of you, and then I'll provide my answer to my own question. But if the public could sit in on our command team meetings, what do you think they'd be most surprised about?
I think the way everybody gets along and how they make fun of each other, you have to stay grounded in any type of crisis. I think that's important. And you're reminded that you're human first. And we certainly do a good job of that with each other, making sure that, and I'm sure Dave's going to elaborate greatly on this, so I'm going to leave it at that.
No, but I think we each acknowledge our weaknesses and thus the strengths of everyone else. And I think that's what's most recognizable as far as this group goes.
So, of course, the humor, without a doubt, but I think it's the trust and that everyone stays in their lane, which is really important, that we all recognize the role of each person there, and then we do what we say we're going to do within that role, and we don't try to do somebody else's job. And I think that's been really crystal clear across all the departments involved.
Outstanding answers. And I was just going to say, because to me, it's the easy pickings, that I think people would be surprised, like, how childish we are in terms of what we think is funny. And we're equal opportunity offenders, so every single one of the 9 of us has taken shots and given shots back. And I think probably what we're most thankful of is Chief Whack doesn't have a trigger finger on his taser, because he'd be the first to say he gets a lot of our jokes and he takes it and gives it back in spades. So we want to thank everyone for that. And then lastly, after we taped the first PSA, we all watched it. And I think our first remark was, this is Sandwich's version of Wayne's World, with Dave as Wayne and JJ as Garth. So I think we've been asking this for months, but when this is all over, which JJ alluded to before this taping started, could be sometime next spring. When it's all over, will you please do a show in costumes that we will purchase you as Wayne and Garth?
Party on.
Excellent.
Excellent. All I got.
Okay, so I think that wraps up PSA number 24, unless anybody else has anything to add.
Just going to say, we're probably going to alter the PSA schedule. Moving forward, we'll take a couple weeks off. We're still going to meet, and so I would expect a few weeks, and then we'll get another PSA going again.
But I can guarantee you, coming up as the superintendent of schools is working on their reopening plan per the guidance documents, that superintendent will be joining us to discuss that well ahead of the opening, so that the public has a knowledge of that. So with that, let's keep Sandwich at 0, be respectful of others, and be safe. Thank you.